Meghan Markle is allegedly very worried that Prince William could move to strip her of her Duchess of Sussex title when he becomes monarch.
Meghan didn't just lose the plot. She's praying the credits roll before Prince William edits her title right off the screen. Tonight, we're pulling the pin on the palace's quiet plan. The behind-doors moves to strip status, the legal switch that turned royal privilege into paperwork, and how one cold memo detonated Harry's immunity, and their entire strategy with it. If you're still watching, you clearly love this kind of content, so hit subscribe so you never miss the next one. This didn't start with a press conference. It started as a whisper gliding down a Westminster corridor, the kind of whisper that makes doors close a little faster. A short, secret meeting. A single clause nobody had touched in decades. And then, at 10:04 a.m., the unthinkable. An official notice, clinical, bloodless, devastating, stating that His Royal Highness Prince Henry Charles Albert David, Duke of Sussex, no longer enjoyed diplomatic immunity under the Crown Protection Act of 1968. 43 words. That's all it took to flip the table. Inside Parliament, silence. Not triumph. Not outrage. Just the sharp freeze of power shifting places. Phones lit up with the same line, effective immediately, and the message rippled outward like a shockwave. Reporters stampeded for airtime. Commentators tried to explain a rule nobody believed would ever be used. And in the Foreign Office, lights flicked on as if it were midnight during a crisis. Lawyers pulling ancient folders, policy teams drafting emergency guidance, and a single subject line crossing every consulate in the world. Immediate reassessment of Sussex travel status. Across the ocean in Montecito, the alarm was quieter, but it cut harder. Harry was already awake. He'd been tipped off. The phone's white glow washed over a face that knew what immediately means in government language. His team splintered into questions. Do we go to state? Do we shift to Canada? Do we lay low? No running, came the answer, because running looks guilty. And that's when the truth settled in. This wasn't symbolism. This was structured BY noon. The hashtags were dueling in the streets of the internet. One side called it overdue accountability. The other called it political revenge dressed up as reform. And then, at 12:47, the sentence that changed the game dropped from a leaked memo. All protective privileges are hereby suspended. Security to be restructured at host country discretion. Translation: the umbrella was gone, and everyone could feel the rain. Inside Buckingham Palace, the tone wasn't moral, it was mechanical. What's lawful? What's containable? What's next? The private confirmations came fast. This wasn't routine. This was penalty. A text crossed an encrypted line with 6 urgent words. He needs to leave London now. And suddenly Frogmore wasn't a residence. It was a risk. IN committee rooms. Junior ministers quarreled with Latin maxims and fresh panic. Can you revoke immunity retroactively? A Home Office barrister gave the only honest answer. We've left the map. By dawn, an advisory note landed with expensive poetry and a hammer-hard point. Privileges tied to diplomatic status would no longer be recognized. Not in theory. Not in practice. Not for him. The Sussex operation went into triage mode. Statements drafted. Old talking points shredded. The mood thinned from fear to disbelief. The impossible had become admin California? Too obvious. Canada? Still Commonwealth. Where then? Somewhere quiet. Somewhere unconnected. Somewhere that doesn't ask questions. Meghan heard first in a whisper, then in a headline. She didn't flinch on camera, but her eyes did. She breathed in and pivoted to cold clarity. We play chess, not checkers. Meanwhile, deep in Whitehall, analysts did the arithmetic no one wants to say out loud: extradition angles, asset exposure, subpoena reach. A single line in a confidential memo chilled the room. Revocation exposes private financials and communications under existing litigation. In other words, everything can be dragged into daylight. BY mid-afternoon. The opposition called it constitutional theater. Even they had to admit the sleight of hand was ruthless. Parliament had just pried open a door most people thought was welded shut. Broadcasters rolled out historians to say unprecedented on loop. Think pieces tried to pick a comparison. Wallace Simpson for scale, Brexit for chaos, but neither quite fit. This was simpler and meaner. The royal firewall had been rewritten, and Harry now stood on the public side of it. That night, the palace received what no one had seen in living memory, a legal summary with the red ink line no sovereign wants to read. This action exposes the subject to full jurisdiction of domestic and foreign courts. The king reportedly set the paper down and said the only sentence that made sense. So, it's begun. And then the knock started. Plain-suited officers. Sealed warrants. Calm voices. Boxes carried from private offices in London. Across the Atlantic, an American liaison hand-delivered a cooperation request under the UK-US Judicial Assistance Treaty. Devices cloned, iClouds mirrored, VPN logs preserved. To viewers at home, it was paperwork. To anyone who understands power, it was exposure. That's when the first spark leaked. A tweet surfaced. Digital audit identifies communications between Sussex office and international representatives. It vanished, but screenshots don't. Tabloids pounced. Anchors speculated. The internet did what the internet does. Builds scaffolding on a rumor and calls it a tower. Inside the cabinet office, a forensic slide deck ended on one file that hushed the room. Harry_internal_finaled MP3, created a week before the vote, tied to a Montecito IP. No one knew what the recording said, but the label said enough. Within hours, rumor turned into headline. The recording exists. Harry moved first. No teleprompter. No ornate study. Just a camera and a glass of water. He didn't deny the voice. He reframed the purpose. That wasn't a confession, he said. It was a warning. He leaned in. Immunity wasn't my shield. It was my cage. The line hit like a flare in a dry forest. And then a glitch. A flicker. 2 seconds of an overlay. Crown_meeting_Euro 1.wave and gone. Parliament denied meddling. The internet didn't care to be why morning. The inquiry chamber looked like a stage set for history. Cameras locked. Pens poised. Harry sat center. No uniforms, no medals, just the weight of a surname. Did you know this action would strip you of protection under international law? Yes. And you recorded private conversations. Why? Evidence, he said. Evidence of what? He looked up. How far they were willing to go to silence me. A new exhibit rolled in like a thunderhead. Crown_meeting, the same title that flashed during his live stream. A voice, senior, unmistakable, spoke in the transcript. We'll handle the Sussex matter in Parliament. Quietly, legally, permanently. The room inhaled and never exhaled. The feed cut to recess. The clip was already everywhere. Crowds surged outside Westminster and Buckingham. Chants collided, no immunity, no lies, while phones thrust into the wet London air caught a different truth. This wasn't monarchists versus Republicans. It was opacity versus exposure. And exposure was winning. Newspapers split along familiar lines. One screamed served at sunrise. Another printed law finally reaches the palace. The most careful of them chose the old-world dagger. No one above the writ. Meanwhile, a thick envelope slid beneath a London office door. The first subpoena. Broad, blunt, and enforceable. All correspondence related to U.S. charitable partnerships. Service effected per new parliamentary order. Absolute in law. Fatal in symbolism. Back in Windsor, another envelope addressed simply to the Duke of Sussex. Aides didn't touch it. Council did. Full discovery, she said, and the color left the room. Emails, financials, internal chats, the lot. In Montecito, another phone lit up with a line no PR team can spin. This isn't symbolic anymore. They're coming for the files. Within the palace, the playbook shifted from defense to containment. You can't spin constitutional surgery. You can only try to survive the patient waking up. Security hardened around residences. The official statement said 5 careful lines about lawful requests. The real work happened off paper. Damage maps, exposure trees, contingency plans, at 8:42 a.m., the first search order landed. Devices mirrored. Archives indexed. The air hummed with the low, relentless sound of hard drives copying the past. For decades, royal immunity insulated the family from the world's nosiest machine, the discovery process. Now the machine was in the building. And then came the slide that scares even the unscarable, a recovered encrypted file labeled final. Decryption pending. Created the week before the vote. The implications wrote themselves. Was it a warning? A receipt? Or a trigger? Talk shows argued about sovereignty. Law professors explained comedy and conventions. Diplomats muttered about precedents no ally wants to set. But the street wasn't debating Latin. The street saw something simple, a family that lived above paperwork now drowning in it. Meghan watched the coverage, closed her laptop, and chose the only tone that wins long wars. Cold patience.